What in the ding dong dingle doo damn it hell is going on, guys? Welcome back to Just Nuts. Today I'm doing a more in-depth video with these three new promo cards that we have for the gold sarcophagus tins. I wanted to go a little more in depth because I think they really deserve more, because honestly, I'm not gonna lie to you, I slept on Konami and I shouldn't have. I think it was a situation where Konami told us, hey, we have three new awesome promos for our new tins this year. They are game-changing, meta-defining cards. And everybody thought, okay, I mean, like, you got new promos. Like, what are you going to say about it? You're not going to say, like, oh, we got some pretty average promos. We got some pretty nice Tier 3 production level promos, so get pumped for those. No, they're going to say that. So we weren't sure. We were kind of confused. Like, we were just... we were very skeptical of whether or not these cards would really hold up to how they talk, and lo and behold, they do. They're pretty insane. Now, today I'm starting with the one I think that is, I don't know, of the three, maybe the worst. I don't want to say the worst, because I don't think it's necessarily worse than the other two, but there is one unique flaw to this one that I think the other two do not have, right? So let's jump right into it. We're looking at Dimension Shifter today. Also, by the way, they just revealed today that he is going to be they're probably getting all three promos in their extra pack, like, right behind us, which is good for them. I mean, I'm sure some people will be pissed about that, but whatever. What's important, though, Dimension Shifter. We have a level 6 Dark Spellcaster effect monster with 1200 attack, 2200 defense. The stats are almost so irrelevant, right? But his effect reads, if you have no cards in your graveyard, as a quick effect, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard until the end of the next turn. Any card sent to the graveyard is banished. Both players, anytime until the end of the next turn, which is really good. So there's one thing I like to look at when I'm looking at a card and judging it overall. I look at three main categories. I look at power, consistency, and utility. Those are the three big factors of a card. I think there are other things you can look at in other, lanes, alleys that cards can still find usefulness, but I think those are the three big ones. And I kind of gave them all. I gave them like a level for each of them. So when it comes to power, insanely high. This is a crazy high power card where in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's like Sanctum. It's like trying to think of what else. I guess like you would say Lancia against Thunder Dragon, decks like that. If you have a one card that can literally more or less say your opponent passes, like not entirely, like maybe they make really weak plays, but for the most part their deck just doesn't do much for a whole turn, it's really, really powerful. And that's exactly what this is. Against a deck that revolves around the graveyard, this card is essentially you pass turn. I mean, you're looking at I'm looking at decks like Burning Abyss, Orcust, Salamangrates, which is a good point, but we'll get to that later. It just, against any deck that actually revolves heavily around the graveyard, which as we've seen Yu-Gi-Oh! Develop, has become more and more of a thing. The graveyard is a resource nowadays. It's not necessarily, oh, it's in the graveyard, it's gone, unless I draw my one Monster Reborn, whatever. It's most decks, a lot of decks, not most decks, but a lot of decks revolve around that graveyard, so very, very high power. Next, we'll look at consistency. I think consistency is medium. I really don't think it's insanely high. The reason that consistency I have on a medium level is just the lane that you can use this card in is actually pretty narrow. Realistically, there's only a going second card because you're not allowed to put any cards in your graveyard before using this. You cannot have cards in your graveyard, or else you can't activate this. So after turn one, you lose the complete the ability to use this at all. But I think overall, like, the fact that it can chain to literally anything, it's not like an Ash Blossom, not like an Ogre. You don't need specific activations of your opponent to chain to. It can literally just be dropped at any point. I think that also allows for a nice level of consistency as well, that you're not missing out on certain chainable things that you have to wait for, which is nice. And then overall, I just think like it's only just kept into that lane, but that also works into utility, which is the last category I want to talk about. And I actually think it has very low utility. I think what it does is very powerful, but it just does one thing. It's just the nature of the card. It's the kind of card it is. Doesn't mean it's bad. Doesn't mean it's terrible. I mean, if a card is like powerful like this, then people are still going to play it. I'm just saying, like, the utility is not really there. It just does one thing. You discard it. Your opponent gets everything banished, and that's all it really does. It doesn't have an effect like Phantasme. Like, it doesn't draw you while also putting a big beast stick on the board while also protecting you from targeting. Like, it doesn't provide you all that extra utility. It's just a discard to banish everything that's sent to the graveyard for 2 turns, right? So I think the utility is low, but that's necessarily a bad thing. I think if this card had too much utility, it may just be too busted, right? So that's pretty much it. Really high power, medium level consistency, and low level utility. It's fine. But I think I still think it's a great card either way. What I want to talk about after that, though, is when this card is useful and when it's not. Because of this card's restriction, saying that you have to have no cards in your graveyard, this card can't really be used all the time. So I want to talk about my expectations for this card and when it's really actually applicable to Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, seriously, if you're going first, this card's useless, right? I mean, not entirely useless. I guess there are still situations. You could still open this going first and just discard it. That way, for your opponent's turn, they still have everything getting banished, right? If you know that you're not playing a deck that's really going to punish you too hard for that on your turn 1, you could still do that, right? So it's still usable turn 1, but really, if you're looking for like maximum utility, you're trying to use this as a disruption going second. I'm trying to drop this on my opponent as they're mid-play, about to start sending stuff to graveyard, and then all of a sudden they're kind of screwed, right? Right, so they started their play, they missed out on a possibly better play, and now they're punished for it. That's when I think like this card is the best thing. But then after that, as soon as you have any cards engraved, this card's completely useless. So I realistically see this being mainly a side deck card for when decks do go second. I guess you could still use it going first. It's not even that terrible going first against a deck that it's that powerful against, but still not great. Mostly going second card. I guess I could see a specific time where there could be maybe some going second decks that want to main deck this just because you're opting second anyway. And if it's a format where most or all of the tier 1 decks at the top of the meta are decks that are weak to this graveyard disruption, it could be a very well played card in the main deck for those going second decks. But for the most part, I see this being a side deck card. Just being used for those decks like that. Just decks for like Orcus, Salamangreats, Strikers, all those. And that's what I like about it. Another thing to note about this card is it is very format dependent. This is a card where, we look at last format, right? We look at we looked at it, Strikers, Salamangreats, Orcus, Thunder Dragon, all 4 of those decks very weak to this card. Even Thunder Dragon, the stuff getting banished, like people play such small Thunder Dragon packages and it's mostly like those extenders that use the graveyard. This card still punishes that deck immensely. Most of that deck at least. So very good against all 4 of those. Like last format, this would have been a 3 of in every single side deck. People would have taken out Lancia just for this card. I tell you, I guarantee you. And I think given the format, a right format like that, and there's a lot of decks currently in Yu-Gi-Oh! That Konami wants to make good, and the way you do that is you give decks extra utility in the graveyard, can really make this card powerful, can really give this card a lot of utility. But I also see formats where it's not the best. Like I think right now it's still pretty good, even if it came out right now. Like Thunder Dragon's still there. Strikers still pretty good against Strikers. They're not getting 3 spells engraved. They're not even getting Ray engraved. Nothing. You can really hurt them that way. And what else? But there are also decks that it's not good against. You're looking at like True Draco turn 1. You're looking at, I don't know, Altergeist. Like if Altergeist weren't hit on the ban list, like stuff like that. There are definitely decks that do not really care that much about it. But it is really good, and it also is chainable to certain stuff to really punish that, and I think that adds extra utility to it. But overall, it's a great card. I mean, all 3 of them are great cards. You're going to hear me say that in all 3 of these videos, but that's pretty much my overall more in-depth analysis of this card. It's really awesome. I'm really excited for it. This is a card that really scares away those decks that have too much graveyard synergy. And really punishes them for it. So I'm excited to see a card like this get used. Excited to see how it get used, how much it changes our metagame, and yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you think I missed anything specifically about this card that I definitely should have brought up, definitely throw that in the comments down below. I'd like to see your guys' thoughts and opinions. This is just one man throwing his thoughts out there. And if you think I'm wrong, if you think this card has other utility, I don't think I'm missing much in terms of like when you can use it. But if I'm missing anything, throw it down below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. As always, subscribe to the channel if you have not yet. I'm doing the other 2 promos probably in the next 2 days, most likely. So get excited for that, and I'll catch you in the next one. All right, peace.